Good overnight. Welcome on in to another episode of From Day One. And I hope you guys give me just a little bit of wiggle room tonight, as tonight's Art Bell topic is one that crosses with usually our Part B shows. So what happens when Art Bell has to tackle a flat earther? Join us from August 5th, 2015 with John the Mug and John Grinsley, Professor, as Art Bell hosts the first annual Flat Earth Debate tonight on Midnight in the Desert as we rock through Dominion. So now from the 25 time zones here and around the world in the Great American Southwest, here's Art Bell.
From the high desert and the great American Southwest, I bid you all good evening, good morning, good afternoon, across the entire world, all its time zones. Welcome to Midnight in the Desert. I'm Art Bell, and this is going to be quite a program tonight. Just two rules for the program: no bad language, and only one call per show if you're able to get through. I would like to welcome KAWL program tonight. Just two rules for the program: no bad language, and only one call per show if you're able to get through. I would like to welcome KAWL Radio, 1370 AM in York, Nebraska. Welcome aboard, you guys. Any of you get hold of your local station, and I've got a little thing up on my Facebook page now telling them, or on artbell.com, how they can get hold of us to carry the program. Well, let's see. I do have a normal list of people to thank. Telos, of course, for the great sound. Thank you very much. Keith Rowland, my webmaster. My current producer, Heather Wade. And I do want to thank Dr. J. He's Dr. J Radio Live, and he's on Tuesday and Thursday between 7 and 9 p.m. Or www.drjradiolive.com. You might take a listen on just before me. Now let me see. The BellGab website. People love Art Bell. MID. That's Midnight in Desert, I guess. Chat site. Stream Guys. LV.net. And Peter Everhart, our sales guy up in Alaska. Now, do I have everything done that I was supposed to do? I think so. Very quickly then, on artbell.com, there was a ghost photograph yesterday or the day before. No, it was the day before. And today, the people at anomalous.com said they didn't like it. They thought it was fake. And they put one up of their own that they think is real. So I've got that one up. Take a look. See what you think of their picture, the one they think is real. A community center in Norwich is reported to be haunted, as are most buildings in England. But this time, says Anomalous.com, looks as if the Norfolk Paranormal has managed to snap photographic evidence of one of the ghostly residents. There are several reasons we think the photo's the real deal, including the fact that the paranormal activity was witnessed by more than one person. In an area the photo was taken, most notably the location is remaining mostly a secret. I don't know how that helps it, with the owners swearing the investigators to secrecy. Well, maybe. This particular ghost isn't being used to drum up publicity. Okay, well, I'll go along with that. That unusual fact alone is almost impressive as the photo itself. See if you can pick out the ghost. We've got it at artbell.com right now. So, all right, here we go. What we're going to talk about tonight is whether or not the Earth is flat. Here comes somebody we're going to call John, and John prefers to remain anonymous. He believes the Earth is flat. He has several business clients who might not be ready to have a ball Earth skeptic as a strategic consultant. John is in no way ashamed to be a ball Earth skeptic. However, being a ball Earth skeptic does not pay the bills, says he. His business clients do, and he hopes the listeners can accept this. I can. Other people in the world would only have a glimpse of who John is based on his videos, posts, and interviews. He says, my statements speak for themselves. We'll see about that. And you get a full view of my take on the flat earth / infinite plane models on my YouTube channel, The Morgile. That's The Morgile, Morgile. So he is to be met by somebody operating way, I think, below his pay grade, but we're very honored to have him here tonight. He is a professor, actually. All right, Dr. Josh Grindley. Now, listen to a little bit of this if you don't think he's going to be operating below pay grade. Research interests: compact objects and binaries in globular clusters, and the origin and evolution of compact X-ray binaries. Good Lord, accretion into white dwarfs, neutron stars, and black holes. Development of a balloon-borne hard X-ray imaging telescope and future space missions for hard X-ray observations of X-ray binaries and quasars. Good Lord. He's published over 500 papers. He definitely thinks the Earth is round, by the way. Well, or oval, whatever, but not flat. National service, numerous advisory committees for NASA, NRC, and NSF. Chair of Division of High Energy Astrophysics. Holy moly. American Astronomical Society, Division of Astrophysics, American Physical Society, honors, a fellow American P. Sloan Foundation, fellow American Physical Society, fellow American Association for Advancement of Science, fellow Guggenheim Foundation, and so forth. So he's a big heavyweight. So I want to welcome both of these gentlemen and hope they're there. John, are you here?
I am here.
Good.
Can you
All
hear
right.
me?
All right. Yeah, I hear you. And Dr. Grindley.
I'm here too.
Excellent. Okay. I hear a little bit of hum or something. So somebody is turning something off or changing something. Don't do that. Leave it on. All right. So, John, look, you gave us so many points that you're going to have to work with me, John, and we're going to have to sort of take these one at a time. I've got them boiled down a little bit. So can we do that? Take them one at a time. Why you think the Earth is flat?
Sure. Yeah, if that's the way that you want to do it, we can do it however you want to.
Well,
it's your show, and
right.
first I want to say I'm a big fan, long-time listener, love your stuff.
Thank you. All right. So let us do that then, in the interest of time, because the doctor can only be with us. He's on the East Coast. We've got him at best a couple of hours. So if you both will hold on, what we'll do is we'll get our break out of the way, and then we'll come back and we'll dive directly into this sort of point by point.
The clock strikes 12. And Midnight in the Desert is pounding packets your way on the Dark Matter Digital Network. To call the show, please direct your finger digits to dial 1-952-225-5278. That's 1-952. Call ART.
All right, here we go. Is the Earth flat? That's what it's all about. John is here along with Dr. Josh Grindley. Again, I maintain operating way below his pay grade, but that's okay. We'll proceed with this and kind of go point by point. So, John, if you're there, I'm going to skip the first two and go directly to, we have a gazillion pictures of Earth from space. Or we should have, I guess. Why don't we have a gazillion pictures of Earth from space? Instead, we have just one. And you add its brand new one that's obviously fake. And I guess, what are you saying, John, that the picture of Earth from space looks flat?
No, that's not what I'm saying at all.
Okay.
And I think at first, if we skip the first 2 points, that's kind of doing it injustice to the argument. But if we can loop back to those or whatever, I think they are important points to make.
All right, well, all right. Real quick then. When was the last time you skeptically scrutinized the globe model? Is that your first one?
Yep.
I don't know. I've got a globe at home. I scrutinize it all the time because I've traveled around it about 3 times. So, I don't know. I'm pretty familiar. How about you, Doctor?
Well, I don't think there's much doubt that the globe is spherical. We've got lots of pictures of it. We've all traveled around it. I've been around it many times. I have friends who've been in orbit. I haven't, but I would love to do that sometime.
Boy, me too.
You can go around it in 90 minutes. So I think this whole debate is
silly,
quite amusing, but I'm happy to be part of it.
All right, John, a response?
Absolutely, and I think there may be some clarification needed on the term scrutinized or skeptically reviewed the globe model, because there are a lot of things that seem to make the Earth seem like a globe, but at the same time, isn't it possible that we were all sort of taught all of these quote-unquote truths and known facts about the globe when we were just very small children?
But John, you're talking to 2 people, myself and the doctor, who have been around the world several times. It's kind of like we have in fact, I went up in the Concorde on the way to Paris, the supersonic plane when we had it, and at 68,000 feet, I promise you, John, tain't flat.
Well, John, there was a nice view of the curved horizon of the Earth about a year ago when that fellow jumped out of a balloon 130,000 feet above New Mexico.
That's right.
Beautiful pictures.
With the fisheye lens, right?
No, it wasn't a fisheye lens.
It was a GoPro fisheye lens, which makes all the all straight lines appear curved. And
well, I don't think it was, John.
If you're in the Concorde, I'm sorry to interrupt, but if you're in the Concorde and you see the totally flat horizon, which is an equidistant circle all around you, as altitude is gained, the horizon level never drops. So if we did live on a globe, the higher and higher you went in altitude, and the further and further your field of vision goes, your angle of attack on the horizon is going to get wider and wider as altitude is gained. But if we did live on a sphere, then it should drop lower and lower the further away you can look. And actually, that's measurable, and we can measure that.
John, that's exactly what was observed by the Apollo astronauts in 1969 as they left Earth. They saw the globe get smaller and smaller, drop farther and farther away below them. How are you going to respond to that, John?
The Apollo astronauts, I'm sorry to say, and I was raised.
Oh, that's right. You think it's all in a movie lot somewhere? Is that?
No,
it wasn't real. Is that it, John?
What I'm telling you is the Apollo missions were demonstrably false.
Oh, I see.
Gee.
Okay. All of the rocks were clearly manufactured in some.
Well, no, I mean even by standard science. Okay, so you have these radiation barriers about 1,000 or 3,000 miles above the surface called the Van Allen radiation belts.
Yes, I'm very familiar with those, John.
Okay. Yeah, they had just been discovered, and they were still being sort of scrutinized and debated when the Apollo missions were launched. And so, you could argue that it's irresponsible of NASA that they didn't include any sort of radiation shielding because Van Allen did warn them about the radiation.
Okay,
however,
we're off on we're off on a tangent here a little bit.
We are, yeah, but I think John is denying the physical evidence. That's the trouble with his theory. It doesn't conform to fact.
No,
so
in other words, NASA,
then it becomes all gimmickry and fakery, and so there was no Apollo. It was all done in a movie lot. John, that scam has been proposed long ago, but it's a very rare group of people that still subscribe to it. I'm surprised that you do.
NASA is a pack of liars that was founded by Freemasons.
Freemasons.
Oh, my goodness.
All right, let's try.
Art, I don't know. I don't think this debate is going to be very useful when we have such biased views and such lack of comprehension of simple facts and figures.
Maybe
how are you going to respond to the fact that Columbus was aware the Earth was round? He watched masts of ships appear before the ships appeared. That's what happens on a spherical globe, John.
That's a
good one. Good one.
That is a fallacy. We have excellent.
No, it's not.
It's observed fact. Go out on a boat and you'll see it for yourself.
Obviously, they're going to see the mast first, John. Of course they are.
The old wives' tale is that when a ship travels away from you, as it goes beyond the horizon, you're supposed to be able to see the bottom sort of travel away from you last. But if you actually look at a ship that travels beyond the horizon with the telescope, you'll see that it is actually just perfectly perpendicular to the horizon. It just sort of seems to go behind the horizon because that's how the laws of perspective work.
John, no, you see the mast disappear
have you
last.
looked at the pictures or the videos, Doctor?
I've seen this myself. It's obvious. Have you been out at sea on a boat? Flat, nice, calm sea with no waves.
I have indeed, and when I've been out many times, and when I was young, I remember saying, "Wow, you can see the curve of the Earth out here on the ocean," but what you're seeing is an equidistant circle around you, because that's how perspective works. That's how the horizon.
No, John, I'm afraid you don't understand geometry. This is very simple spherical geometry, plane geometry.
Okay.
Understood by the Greeks 2,000 years ago.
We can get into spherical geometry if you want to do that.
No,
I don't
want
happy to. But I think let's hear some more.
Yeah, we've got so many points here. Let's do them one at a time. All right. For example, how can we see vertical, perpendicular buildings from over 50 miles away? They ought to be a quarter mile below the horizon.
That's correct. And we don't see the bottom of those buildings 50 miles away.
That's right.
We don't see the bottom of the buildings, Doctor, but that's because of the laws of perspective.
Laws?
It's
What?
not. Perspective has nothing to do with it.
Doctor, with all due respect, perspective has everything to do with it. The curvature of the Earth, you can measure it simply by it's 8 inches times the mile squared, and that's how much drop should occur every mile away from the observer's eye. So it's 8 inches per mile squared. So if it's 1 mile, it's simply an 8-inch drop. And if it's 2 miles, the mile squared, so it's 4 times 8 inches, which is a 32-inch drop. At 3 miles, it's 9 times 8, that's 72-inch drop. And when you get out to 50 miles, those buildings should be based a full quarter mile below the horizon, and they should be angled away from your perspective. But instead, we can see them perpendicular to the horizon, perfectly vertical, perfectly visible from well over 50 miles away.
John, that's because we have topography on the surface of the globe. We're not living on a ball bearing, in case you haven't noticed.
So you're saying that
you look out at a city 50 miles away, you're not seeing the curvature of the Earth, you're seeing the topography of the land.
With all due respect, Doctor, I think it's high time that you apply some rational skepticism to it.
No, I'm perfectly rational. That's what science is all about.
All right,
if you go back to the ocean and the mast disappearing last, you have precisely what we're talking about. That has nothing to do with perspective.
You're actually, if you look at the videos, there's video evidence, there's plenty of it. You're wrong. That's a wives' tale. That's not what happens.
Does everything come down to perspective? Is every argument going to come down to perspective?
Yeah, I'd like to hear perspective defined here. This is a very interesting use of the word perspective, which has nothing to do with spherical problem.
Exactly, that's exactly right. Perspective works on a flat plane. The further away from you objects travel, the smaller and smaller they appear to get. Agreed?
That's for a fixed finite size. Yes, of course. That's nothing more than the angular size that you're talking about.
Okay. So what happens to that object when it gets beyond the vanishing point? On a flat plane.
There's no vanishing point. If you have to understand some physics here, John. It doesn't just vanish. Objects will get smaller and smaller, as you just said. They'll become very, very small, but then you don't resolve them any longer because something called diffraction prevents you from resolving them.
Doctor, with all due respect, with all due respect,
John, with all due respect, we've got only so much time. Here's another point.
I think we're getting off the subject here.
Yeah. How can a westbound flight, John says, from New York to Los Angeles have identical duration on a globe spinning about 1,000 miles per hour east with its return flight?
John, everybody on the globe is spinning together, including the airplane that's flying above the globe. So there's the answer to your question. Okay,
we're all
moving. That's right. On the equator, we're all moving 1,000 miles an hour. Isn't that remarkable? Why are we being thrown off? Is probably what you're wondering.
Now, Doctor, let me ask you a question. What about when the jet engines propel the plane westward? Do you agree? Do you agree that the plane should be traveling in the opposite direction as the spin of the Earth?
Yes, it's the spin of the Earth is the whole frame of reference.
It's the whole frame of reference, but Doctor, objects moving in opposite directions have a much higher relative difference in speed than objects moving in the same direction. So an eastbound flight should be a much longer flight than a westbound flight, shouldn't it, Doctor, since the world is supposedly spinning towards the east?
That's correct, but there is something that you may have noticed. It's called wind and weather, which is what makes the difference between eastbound and westbound flights. It's the circulation of the atmosphere that the plane is flying through.
Mm-hmm. Jet stream,
the plane is flying over the Earth as a fixed frame of reference, which is indeed rotating, but so is the plane. So there's no relative motion relative to the spin of the Earth.
There's no relative motion relative to the spin of the Earth. So you're arguing that objects traveling in opposite directions don't have a higher relative difference in speed than objects traveling at the same time.
Here, John, look, you're getting mixed up here.
No,
when the plane takes off from New York, it is on a spinning platform, and whether it's going east or west, it always has that angular velocity that it had when it left the airplane.
Always. Okay, so
and that has nothing to do with its velocity relative to the ground. That's
the laws of motion state that an object in motion will tend to maintain its velocity until enacted upon by some other force. And with all due respect, Doctor, don't you consider several jet engines attached to a plane some other force?
That's what's propelling the plane over the Earth, the surface of the Earth. That's the frame of reference that we've just defined.
The problem is not the frame of reference.
Spinning has nothing to do with the motion of the plane from New York to LA.
The problem is that you are incapable of even theorizing that our world is
I can fully understand what our globe is doing.
John, let him finish.
Okay, I'm sorry.
No, I've just repeated the same point several times, but I don't think John is quite understanding that there is a frame of reference that the plane has taken off from. And when it lands in wherever it's going, it's on that, still in that same frame of reference. We could expand this, if you like, John. It's not just that the Earth is spinning. We're moving around the sun at an enormous velocity, 30 kilometers per second.
All of us.
Yeah, that makes the spin of the Earth look trivial. But again, that has nothing to do with, the motion of the plane in flight from,
Now, I think that you're
using relative velocities because you're making it as if the plane were flying in a frame of reference that was the ether, as it used to be called, before we understood what space was all about. And that's not what's going on here. The plane has taken off from a point on the solid Earth. You would like it to be flat, but of course it's demonstrably round. But that has nothing to do with your misconception about relative velocities.
No, it has nothing to do with relative velocity, sir.
That's what you're trying to say. You're saying if I'm flying east, I'm flying faster than I'm flying.
It has to do. Okay, so if you're driving down the highway and you're going 65 miles an hour down the highway, and the car coming towards you is going 65 miles.
No, that's what we mean by relative velocities. But that's where you're wrong, John. Because
no, that's where you're wrong, sir.
Well, John, this is getting to be slightly ridiculous.
It is. You're right, because see, I grew up on planet Earth, and I'm fully aware of the globe model and all of the reasoning behind it. But see, the difficult thing is to have even a very intelligent person such as yourself even consider for just a scientific theory, just for a little bit of, like a mind experiment, to even sit down for a minute and theorize, maybe the world is flat and stationary. And I think flat Earth is a bad word for it because it implies that infinite space is somehow true. That's not the model whatsoever. We're not, a disk floating around in space, if that's what most people want to think. The model that I subscribe to is an infinite plane model, where basically the sun has carved out a puddle while traveling around the magnetic center, which is fixed on our North Pole. And what you know as the Antarctic is actually the boundaries, the outer edge of the dartboard, essentially.
Well, okay, John, if we don't want to talk about relative motion, because we're not getting very far in that, because you haven't understood what I've been saying, let's talk about your model for the sun.
Exactly. I've heard the argument that you
Hold on,
I would
John.
love to hear more about your model for the sun. That's very interesting. So the sun is this magical thing that is circling around the Earth. What powers this thing? It's not obviously something that we normally think of as the sun and a star.
That's a good question, but it's obviously...
So is this all some mysterious source of energy that can circle around the plane, the infinite plane that we're living on?
It's no more mysterious than gravity, but I believe it's some type of magnetic anomaly. There are lots of different theories, but I think a lot more study and scrutiny needs to go into it because, believe it or not, it has been irrefutably proved that our world is indeed flat and stationary, not a spinning globe.
That's remarkable because it's contradicting all the evidence we've just been talking about. But the sun makes a very interesting way of testing your model because this magnetic anomaly, as you call it, must be some very peculiar source of energy that we've never even considered before. Is that what you would subscribe to?
Well,
and
there's
all those
a
little
lot of
points of light you see in the sky that we call stars, are those just anything like the sun, or are those other magnetic anomalies, or whatever this theory of yours?
That's a good question, and until we fly up there and see, I don't think anybody really knows. Sure, we can look at the light and we can theorize that the sun is 93 million miles away, but really the same mathematics that's used to prove the sun is 93 million miles away can actually be used to prove that the sun's about 3,000 miles away. And
oh my goodness, John! All right, well, that's a great place to break. No, we got.
For Dark Matter News, I'm Leo Ashcraft. Scientists are working on what might be considered the option of last resort for global warming. Researcher Sudhanshu Jain said it's an insurance policy. It's called the Marine Cloud Brightening Project, and it's designed to fight global warming by making clouds over the ocean thicker and brighter so they reflect more sunlight and cool the planet. The Sunnyvale team has reached a milestone with a high-pressure nozzle that uses salt water and looks like a normal water spray. But it took scientists a year to come up with the exact rate, flow, and pressure so that the water droplets come out to the perfect size. Robert Wood, one of the top atmospheric scientists in the world, says we owe it to the future generations to study it now.
Now, I don't think this should be a solution, but I think it's morally, for me, is appropriate to at least do the research to find out more about it.
The salt particles coming out of this nozzle are so small that in order to see them with the naked eye, you have to turn off the lights and use a laser. Once the nozzle is fine-tuned, the plan is to use a barge to shoot the salt particles into the sky and see what happens. The researchers say you can already see the concept at work. Satellite images show the ship tracks from vessels crisscrossing the ocean, spewing exhaust that turns into clouds and lasts up to a week. The project needs several more years and millions of dollars in funding before its widespread use. NASA has captured a beautiful, rare view of the moon passing in front of the sunlit face of Earth. The stunning animation, taken 1 million miles from Earth, shows the fully illuminated far side of the moon that is never visible from our planet. That's because our position is tidally locked, which means that we always see the same face pointing towards Earth, although both sides receive equal amounts of light. The animation shows images of the far side of the moon, illuminated by the sun. Also, it crosses between the Discover spacecraft's Earth Polychromatic Imaging Center camera, otherwise known as EPIC, and telescope, as well as the Earth 1 million miles away. The animation was captured by Earth Polychromatic Imaging Camera aboard the Deep Space Climate Observatory. EPIC has a constant view of the fully illuminated Earth as it rotates, providing scientific observations of ozone, vegetation, cloud height, and aerosols in the atmosphere. Once EPIC begins regular observations next month, the camera will provide a series of Earth images, allowing study of daily variations over the entire globe. There's a picture floating around social media. It states that at 12:30 on August 27th, you will see 2 moons in the sky, but only one will be the moon. The other will be Mars. It continues by saying it won't happen again until 2287, adding that no one alive today has ever witnessed this happening. The email and photo are perpetuating a hoax that rears its crazy head every summer since 2003, 12 years running. That's a long time for a hoax to run in our world of information. Mars can never appear as large as a full moon as seen from Earth. Mars isn't even visible in July 2015, and although it may come into view in the east before dawn by August 27, 2015, it won't be anywhere near the July or August full moon. What's more, Mars is nowhere near its brightest or closest in July or August of 2015, or at any time this year. This year so far, Mars has been relatively inconspicuous in our sky. It's on the far side of the sun from Earth. That'll continue to be the case throughout the rest of the year. So how did this rumor of Mars as big and bright as the moon get started? It started with an actual event in 2003. On August 27th of that year, Earth and Mars came slightly closer than they've been in 60,000 years. Our two worlds, center to center, were less than 35 million miles apart, just over 3 light minutes apart. The last people to come so close to Mars were Neanderthals. So was Mars as big and bright as the moon, even at its closest in 2003? Never, but the legend continues. I'm Leo Ashcraft for Dark Matter News.
Call Midnight in the Desert. Please dial 1-952-CALL ART. That's 1-952-225-5278.
Or an oasis for the mind, or you're pulling your hair out. John is here. He is not using his real name for business maintenance purposes, and he's debating Dr. Grindley, a very bright, very bright guy that we've got to have back on a full show. And I think for many people, John probably just blew his case right clear off the flat Earth with the comment that the sun, for your model to be true, has to be, did you say 3,000 miles away, John?
Yeah, that's correct. That's about 3,000 miles away. That's right. And we can prove this using Euclidean geometry. It's a fairly standard experiment where essentially you measure the angles of the shadow cast by the sun at high noon at multiple points with miles in between each point on the same meridian.
John, I was going to mention that our astronauts went to the moon, which is 250,000 miles away, but I'm sure you're going to come back with, no, they didn't, it was fake. Right?
No, the astronauts never went to the moon. That was all a film. The Apollo missions were films designed to trick the generation, you guys' generation, into believing in a lie.
Well, John, that's really disappointing to hear you say that. I know others have said that, but I'm surprised that a guy of your age, I don't know how old you are, but that you would subscribe to this.
I'm too, Doctor. The fact that
that real live hardware, just all an elaborate fake, I guess, huh?
Not that elaborate.
Doctor, let me ask the doctor a question. Look, John is a bright guy.
I'm sure he is. Yeah, but that's why I'm really surprised that you can just get so far down the wrong track, John, in thinking about simple geometric concepts. Let's go back to the sun, because I think this is fascinating what you're suggesting. If the sun were 3,000 miles away, have you worked out the power that the sun would have to have, this magnetic anomaly? What produces light and something that is only 3,000 miles away to illuminate the whole Earth and produce our climate? I assume you're not questioning that the distance from New York to LA is 3,000 miles. So you've got the sun about as far away from you, wherever you are right now, I don't know where you are, it doesn't matter, as New York and LA are. So
surely you can't believe that, John, do you?
This is amazing. How do you get?
It's actually. I mean, it's mathematically proved. I mean, if you would have let me finish, the standard experiment that's done by colleges all over the world, the default answer will always be 3,000 miles away to the sun using that Euclidean geometry. Only by adding a layer of complexity into the equation and assuming that we live on a sphere with a circumference of 25,000 miles, then do you get the nonsensical answer of 93 million miles away.
So, John, let's pursue the 3,000 miles, because this is really interesting. Mm-hmm. If it were 3,000 miles, it has to be above us to cast light down onto us. How do I get, daylight in Chicago and San Francisco and New York all at the same time? If the sun were only 3,000 miles up, there would be a much larger diurnal effect.
That's a good point.
That's more than 3 time zones away, so it doesn't work, John.
Yeah, it's a good question, and the reason is, see, you're still thinking of the Earth as a globe. You have to.
No. I'm letting it be flat now. So that makes it even worse when it's flat.
No. Well, then you're misunderstanding though. You got to understand the North Pole is in the center of the dartboard. Okay, and then the next ring out on the dartboard is the northern hemisphere. And then the next ring out on the dartboard is the southern hemisphere. Now, first of all, and this is admitted, all of the maps that we have are all wrong. You can fit Canada twice in the length of Russia, so all of the relative sizes are wrong on the maps anyways. So it's really...
So that means if I were walking from A to B, all those maps being wrong, I could get there much faster or much longer than my map would have told me. Is that what you're saying?
No, well, the maps still work because, you can walk around...
But still work, okay.
No, you're twisting my words. The reason that the maps are inaccurate is because they're assuming that the Earth is a globe when taking the measurements and measuring the relative differences in sizes of the continents. But you have to study the model. I mean, I wish you would at least study the flat Earth model before assuming that it's
I think it would be fascinating to study, because I've already pointed out to you here, and I'm not sure you've been following what I'm saying, that what your model is suggesting is already self-contradictory. We can't have the same 3-hour time difference between New York and LA if my light bulb, the sun, is only 3,000 miles above them on a flat plane.
Right.
That doesn't work, John.
Well, no, that's how it works, and you have to understand it's when the light from the sun comes through the atmosphere, it does sort of have like a shotgun effect. So essentially, roughly half of the Earth is lit at any time by the sun, and the further it gets away from your perspective and it goes behind the horizon, it goes a lot further, to get behind the horizon because it's on a much higher plane.
Why is there a horizon? The sun is 3,000 miles up, and it's a flat plane. So I can be 10,000 miles away in my flat plane. You haven't told me how big the plane is, but I can be 10,000 miles away, and the sun is not behind any horizon. So
well, if you go and study weather balloon footage, I don't know if you've ever looked at.
I know all about balloons, John. I launched them to 40 miles up.
Every time you see the sun every time you see the sun in the weather balloon footage, it'll just be a few degrees above the horizon. Which and there's a few other.
Not true, John. The sun can be straight overhead. I can show you pictures from our own balloon-borne telescope.
Okay, well then it's straight ahead.
Yeah, he actually launches balloons. So listen to
But
him.
it's not 90.
Well, I don't launch them. NASA launches them. But of course, I think John thinks that this is all a fake or contrived operation. We put balloons 40 miles above the Earth, John, with telescopes on them. We do real astronomy, astrophysics. And so all the things you're talking about are simply not the case. I haven't been up in the balloon myself, but I've had my experiments and telescopes and detectors and images, just like the guy that jumped out of the balloon with that. You're accusing him with a fisheye lens to somehow have made it all a fake shot.
If the horizon appears as a curve from that distance without a fisheye lens, again, it's because it's an equidistant circle around you.
Well, John, these were regular cameras that this guy used, and they weren't fisheye lenses. He wasn't trying to take the picture of the whole globe, so there was no distortion in those cameras.
Understood. Granted, and the reason that it looks like or appears as a curve is because the horizon will always be an equidistant circle around you at that altitude.
Well, that's, I guess, your model, but we have all this contradictory direct measurement data. We can measure distances. We don't have to imagine what they are on some map. We can measure distances precisely. Radar does that, as you certainly know. So we know what shapes and distances of things are. So there's no ambiguity.
There's no curvature.
You could not fake this.
There is no curvature.
The science, John, the science about the sun is good, hard, settled science.
No, it isn't.
All of this is hard, settled science, Art, including going to the moon. We have enormous amounts of data.
We don't want to get stuck there. He'll take us somewhere we don't want to go.
Anybody who believes we went to the moon believes in a TV series that was false. We're going to have to agree to disagree on that.
Yes,
John,
let's do that.
Tell me about this. This wonderful, exciting news of NASA's mission to Pluto a few weeks back. Is that all just a big sideshow as well?
Sure. Why not? How much money are they going to get to make that movie?
Money. So who's making money on these movies, John? I mean, this is amazing. I don't know. Are you? I don't know. No, certainly not me, and certainly not NASA. NASA is not making money in anything. It's doing pure science. This is what gets into textbooks. Science. This is what you should be,
scratching for a budget.
John, this is what you should have taken back. I don't know.
All of NASA's stuff is photoshopped images.
Oh, my goodness, John.
They might have some stuff from Hubble that's pictures of the stars, but...
let's do Hubble for a second. I want to hear about Hubble. So we got this beautiful telescope up there, except it's not above a globe. It's above this flat plane. How is it getting those gorgeous pictures? Things that we couldn't even imagine. Are those all photoshopped as well?
And it's amazing that science, and you can prove, I can prove to you that the Earth has no curvature, and I can prove to you that
wait a minute. John, you're not responding.
The pretty pictures from science.
Yes.
So yeah,
you're not responding.
So the Hubble stuff is just all just fluffy, pretty pictures and no science. Is that it?
They are definitely pretty pictures.
They are, but I mean, do they have any reality, or is this just again?
Well, have you? A guy named Matt Boylan was actually a subcontractor for NASA. He did a lot of realistic art of like hypothetical alien worlds with predefined lighting scenarios with mock celestial events. And so he was one of the people that actually broke the story that NASA was basically faking just about everything.
Oh my goodness, John!
So are you suggesting the Hubble?
Say that.
Are you saying the Hubble? Hold it, John.
Beautiful actions of the universe, and you're saying, and this space artist. I like space art, by the way. I'm a science fiction fan.
But you're saying that
this is so much better than fiction, John. This is the real thing out there. These gorgeous images of galaxies.
Yep.
A gazillion light years away.
And that trumps the measurable fact that the Earth is flat and stationary, the pretty pictures.
Well, it doesn't trump anything, John. This is reality. This is the world we live in.
This
is the world that the Greeks understood 2,000 years ago.
They theorized it 2,000
No, John, they didn't. Do you know the experiment the Greeks did in a well between Cyrene and northern Egypt and what we would now call Cairo? But they measured the diameter of the Earth and proved it was round by simultaneously, amazing they could do this, measuring the depth of a sunbeam into a well on two different points on a meridian. So think of it.
That's why we can go 40 miles into the air with a weather balloon and there's no curvature of the horizon.
John, the Greeks proved there was curvature and they measured the diameter of the Earth.
We can see it with our own eyes, sir.
400 BC.
You're failing to see what's right in front of you because you cannot imagine our world as anything.
I can imagine what you're talking about, and I just have trouble taking it seriously because it's so demonstrably false. And you're refusing to list the fact.
Well, look, hang on a second, and I'll tell you. 6 months ago, I would have agreed with you that our world is a globe spinning around the sun, and if you would have mentioned the word flat Earth, I would have laughed and gone about my business.
Okay, do you have an accident? Okay. Did something happen?
Did something happen? Yeah, yes. I looked at the evidence and I scrutinized it in both models, and I found that the only one logical, correct answer is the infinite plane model. And I'm sorry, it sounds crazy. You haven't given it enough thought yet, but I'm telling you that it's the truth.
No, it's fascinating, John, to hear your reasoning. But tell me, I'm really curious. What was it? I guess this is what Art was asking. How is it that all of a sudden, after how many years you've been, aware of your everyday surroundings, which I'm sure you've always been, what was it that all of a sudden tipped the scales? And just 6 months ago, you gave up on this thing that was second nature to everyone, that we're on a globe, and it became flat.
Well, and the reason it's second nature to us is because it's drilled into our minds since our very first day at school. You learn 1 + 1 is 2, and the world is a globe. I mean, that's how early they get you with the propaganda. And to answer your question, what happened was I was simply compelled to look at the evidence. And I think it's high time that the rational, skeptical scientists of the world take a little time to just rationally, skeptically look at the globe, which is something that you have not done since you were...
No, John, that's where I beg to differ. I've done this. All of us have done that. You're absolutely right. We should look skeptically at our surroundings, and we should rely on pure measurement and observation and not make assumptions. And if you follow that course, that's what science is all about.
Okay.
You would be forced to conclude, John, there's absolutely no alternative, that we are indeed on a globe, that our globe is spinning, that our globe is not only spinning, it's orbiting the sun. Ptolemy went through all this. Ptolemy, of course, had this Earth-centric view.
And
Copernicus came along and understood that it was just
and that is exactly why
heliocentric view, and we've been on that course ever since. All of the misconceptions and things that didn't quite fit in the Ptolemaic view of what our solar system is all about, which was a much, much simpler thing to understand. We had no clue that there were galaxies or everything else going on until the 1920s. So this is the last several hundred years, 500 years, 400 years since Copernicus, when all of this revolution has taken place, but right up through the last 50 years. So you're doing the right thing to be skeptical, but this is exactly what science has done.
Doctor, have you ever read Zetetic Astronomy by Dr. Robotham?
No, I'm afraid I haven't read that.
Well, you ought to read it because there's a lot of great proof. And you want to talk about science. Okay, let's talk about the North Star Polaris. how does the North Star Polaris maintain its alignment? And, people say it's hundreds of years, or some people say it's thousands of years. Some people say, oh, well, it changed once. But the point is...
No. Can I just jump in here?
Sure.
Polaris does not maintain its alignment. The Earth is a spinning top, and if you remember as a kid playing with the top on a tabletop, you pull the string and it spins and it's kind of stationary, then it starts to wobble. Remember how that worked? It wobbles, and then eventually the top falls over on your desk or tabletop. That's exactly what the Earth is doing. It's a spinning gyroscope, and because it's spinning, it's wobbling, it's precessing, we call it. The reason it's doing that is because the moon is producing a gravitational pull on the Earth.
Wait a minute. What
this
about
is simple physics.
The North Star Polaris?
So the North Star doesn't always stay over the North Pole. It's moving on a circle, and it moves around every 26,000 years.
No. Okay. So
it does, John.
You're talking about the precession of the equinoxes, but...
That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's what makes the North Star no longer the North Star. The ancient Egyptians didn't have a North Star to line up north on building the Great Pyramids. The North Star was way off. Polaris, rather. The star was there, of course, but it was no longer lined up with the spin axis of the Earth. All of this is well known.
So you were around back then.
We know exactly where Polaris was 5,000 years ago, too.
You do? Okay.
Yes, we do.
Just like you know the Earth is a globe. Okay.
No, John. The difference is I can measure it. I can measure where Polaris was.
But you can't measure because there's no curvature.
And I can measure that there is curvature.
There is
so can
no
you
curvature.
if you go out in an airplane and measure distances on your so-called flat plane. They won't be consistent with a flat plane because it's not a flat plane. It's a spherical globe.
Can I ask you a question, please? I want to ask a question.
Sure.
When you fly...
I'm running out of time here, Art, but let's have a few more questions,
all right,
I guess.
Well, this is my question. When you fly from Los Angeles to, let us say, Hong Kong, and you measure the distance, that we can do scientifically. I hope John believes we can do that scientifically. Do you, John?
Well, of course you can measure distance.
Okay, and if you take the Great Circle route to get there, it's not as far. How come?
The Great Circle.
Yeah. In other words, if you go north and then around, as if, it's a globe, a ball.
Well, because you got to understand, the flat Earth is sort of like the globe model, but it's wrapped around the North Pole. You have to study the model to understand it. You're trying to apply globe model laws and maps to the flat Earth map. Yes, you got to understand.
I'm just talking mileage here.
Mileage, okay.
Yeah.
Well, then how can you explain that you can fit the Canada twice into the length of Russia on the standard maps?
I don't know. I'm asking you a question and you're responding with another question.
Exactly. That's the point. I mean, you can't go by the maps that you're looking at because they're inaccurate.
Well, John, they can be confirmed by going out. If you wanted to go out with a ruler stick, you can measure what your map should be telling you. That's the way maps are constructed. You probably know all about GPS. I don't know if you have a cell phone, but that's what tells you where you are, again, on the surface of a globe.
Are you familiar with
If your theory were right, and you're living on this distorted flat plane, GPS wouldn't work. Nothing would work.
Are you familiar with Nikola Tesla's towers that he invented? I think it was in the 20s or 30s or whatever, where it was basically wireless communication.
John, you're doing it again. A question.
That's where radio communication began. That's precisely what's used to
triangulation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I know.
Cell phone towers.
Yes, of course, John. That's exactly what we're talking about. But
we don't even. Why would we need satellites if we can bounce radio waves off the ionosphere anyway?
Oh, you know what,
John,
gentlemen, Doctor, hold tight. We're at a break.
Precise positions.
I have to break.
The atmosphere disturbs the signal to begin with.
Hold it right there, gentlemen. I have to break. This is radio. I have to deal with time. This is midnight.
speed of light in the darkness. This is Midnight in the Desert with Art Bell. Now, here's Art.
Here I am. We've got with us John. He's anonymous beyond that name for business purposes, and Dr. Josh Grinley. And we're discussing whether or not the Earth is flat. It's been pretty spirited, I would say. I would like to get a couple more points in. I can sense the doctor is getting close to bailing, but a couple of more points. And, for example, here's one. John says, how can the upper atmosphere be adjacent to the vacuum of outer space?
Gravity, John. Gravity pulls the atmosphere, keeps it on this round globe. Why is it round? Because that's the equilibrium shape that a mass must assume. That's why stars are round, spherical. They're not pancakes. So all of this we understand, John. But again, I'm not trying to sound like I'm belittling. I hope I don't convey that. I'm trying to convince you, John, that you ought to lighten up here and understand what the whole world of science has arrived at, not just recently, but over hundreds of years, and with such incredible discovery in the last decade or two. Those Hubble images we were talking about. I could also talk about X-ray images that we have from the Chandra telescope.
Gravity, and you got gravity,
and you think they're all fake. This is just so discouraging.
Well, everything that does seem to be proof, Doctor, you're right, seems to be then adjudged to be fake by John. And John sounds like such a bright guy that I just can't figure how he obviously believes this.
That's why I was asking what happened 6 months ago. I mean, it's great to have a moment of truth and say, my God, what is the world I'm living in? That's fine. I'm all in favor of that. But to deny rational thinking and thousands of years, beginning with the Greeks, who I keep coming back to, they're so amazing what the Greeks did. But all of modern science, and you've got it all cooked up to be a giant hoax. It's just
so you say that it's the magic of gravity that keeps the atmosphere.
Not magic. There's no magic of gravity at all. Isaac Newton taught us what gravity is, and we now understand it in
Isaac Newton
glorious detail.
Okay, hold on. Now, first of all, gravity was theorized in order to account for the fact that we're not flung from the spinning Earth at 1,000 miles per hour towards the east near the equator. Okay, gravity is a theory to prove the globe model. Now, you're also saying that...
John, what do you suppose keeps you, sitting in your chair instead of floating off if there's no gravity? I mean...
Well, there's no need for gravity on the flat stationary Earth that we dwell on.
I see.
We're not spinning at 1,000 miles per hour, so you don't have to account for that outward thrust generated by the spin.
Okay.
It's the simple laws of density or buoyancy that causes, heavier, denser objects to find their way down and lighter, less dense objects to find their way up. It's the natural order of things, and there's no need for gravity to explain the law of physics. What goes up must comes down on the flat.
Oh, really? Well, then, I mean, why do things come down? If I throw a ball in the air, why does it have to come down? Something's pulling it down, John.
Well, it's more than likely, sir. It's electromagnetic, but gravity has never been proved, sir. It is a theory.
Oh, gravity's been proved time and time again, and
no,
of course
sir.
It began with Newton.
No, sir.
We're on the verge, John. If you don't like the proofs of gravity so far, in probably the next 5 years, there will be a very major discovery that will come from astrophysics, but from physics really, and that is of waves of gravity, gravitational waves, which
that have never ever been detected, even though
that's right. But there now is an enormous big telescope in the state of Washington, and another one in Louisiana, and another one in Italy, and in Europe, and those gigantic gravitational wave telescopes are now almost sensitive enough to detect the gravitational wave sources that we have proven are out there.
Gravity is a theoretical fantasy that was dreamed up by...
Well, John, I don't think that's what anybody else but you and your colleagues and your...
No, that is what it is. That's what gravity is.
Of nature.
Gravity was a theory designed or theorized to explain the globe model and why we're not flung from the face.
No, that's not what gravity was designed to do at all. It was designed to explain the fact that objects fall. That has nothing to do with the globe model.
Okay, then what is
There's
keeping
no
us
need
pinned?
for a
Then
global
what is keeping us pinned to the Earth while we're spinning 1,000 miles per hour?
mass of the Earth, John. That's what
Mass of
gravity
the Earth.
is due to. It is, yes, because the Earth is
So-
not a flat plane. It is a
Gravity,
mass that weighs.
gravity is supposedly due to the mass of the Earth warping space-time.
No,
and
John.
space-time-
No.
You're getting confused. You're jumping ahead to Einstein. Warping space-time has nothing whatsoever to do with the Earth's gravity. It's a very teeny tiny effect, barely measurable. It's been measured. It's not that tiny. But Newton, of course, had no conception of this. It was 300 years until Einstein told us and instructed us in his brilliant way about the warping of space and time. But that we haven't talked about. If we were talking black holes, which is what I normally like to think about, we'd be having fun discussing warped space-time. But gravity on the Earth, no need for any of that. The apple falls from the tree. That's what Newton observed and said, "My God, how could this happen?"
Because the apple.
And with that, as much as he's going to keep yelling, we are going to have to leave it. Unfortunately for tonight, as we have hit our hour point. Come back tomorrow. You'll have more fun with John the Moron. Not the name he wants to give himself, but screw it. My show. I'm giving him that name. And the Professor with Art Bell. Till then, please make sure you do like, share, and subscribe. Help us get to that goal of 50,000 views, 1,000 subscribers. So Boxy over at Nexters, of course, will go ahead and send us those nice red boxes, and Google puts us on the algorithms. Coinbase, Ibotta, as you know. Until then, please like, share, and subscribe. Be kind to one another, and release the Krakens as we march along this night and every night here from day one. Have a great night. Enjoy your night's sleep on this Beer Earth, and we'll see you tomorrow.